My name is Daniel, a 45-year-old engineer living in a picturesque suburb with my wife Samantha and our two children, Emily, 17, and Josh, 14. Our home, a charming two-story house with a white picket fence, sits in a quiet neighborhood where everyone knows each other. It's the kind of place where kids ride their bikes in the street and neighbors greet each other with friendly waves. Samantha and I have been married for 20 years, and for most of that time, I believed we had a strong, loving relationship. She works as a graphic designer, a job she loves and excels at. Our life together seemed perfect. A beautiful home, successful careers, and two wonderful children. But as I would soon discover, perfection can be deceiving. Life in our suburban haven was a routine of comfort and familiarity. Mornings began with Samantha and me sipping coffee on the front porch, watching the sunrise before the hustle and bustle of the day began. Emily and Josh would join us, groggy but cheerful, before heading off to school. Evenings were filled with family dinners, laughter, and the occasional argument about chores or homework. We were like any other family, navigating the ups and downs of daily life. Weekends were a time for bonding and relaxation. We often spent Saturdays at the local farmers market, followed by picnics in the park. Sundays were reserved for family movie nights, with everyone piling onto the couch to watch the latest blockbuster or a classic favorite. It was a simple, happy life, and I cherished every moment of it. But as I would soon learn, beneath the surface of our idyllic existence, secrets were lurking, waiting to shatter the illusion of our perfect life. The betrayal that lay ahead would not only test the strength of our marriage, but also the very foundation of the family we had built together. Little did I know the signs were there all along, subtle hints that something was amiss. But I, like so many others in my situation, was blind to them, too trusting, too comfortable in the belief that my wife and I were partners in every sense of the word. The painful journey of discovery and confrontation was about to begin, and nothing would ever be the same again. It all began with subtle changes in Samantha's behavior, the kind of shifts that, in hindsight, should have set off alarm bells. She started spending more time on her phone, always quick to hide the screen whenever I walked into the room. Her work hours became erratic, with sudden late nights and weekend projects that she had never mentioned before. Initially, I dismissed it as the demands of her job, not wanting to seem paranoid or distrustful. Samantha's mood swings were another red flag. She became increasingly irritable and distant, snapping at me and the kids for the slightest reasons. Our conversations, once filled with warmth and laughter, turned terse and guarded. She would often retreat to our bedroom or the study, claiming she needed space to work or unwind. I tried to give her the benefit of the doubt, chalking it up to stress or fatigue. One evening, I noticed a significant change in her appearance. She had always been beautiful, but she seemed to be putting more effort into her looks. New clothes, frequent trips to the salon, and an almost obsessive focus on her fitness routine. While I appreciated her desire to take care of herself, it felt different, like she was dressing for someone else. When I asked her about it, she brushed off my concerns, laughing and calling me silly for even suggesting such a thing. Then there were the mysterious phone calls. Late at night, her phone would buzz with messages and calls from a contact saved as work. Whenever I inquired about it, she would get defensive, insisting it was just a colleague discussing an urgent project. My gut told me something was wrong, but I couldn't bring myself to confront her directly without any solid evidence. I began to notice that she was increasingly protective of her phone, never leaving it unattended, and always taking it with her, even to the bathroom. This behavior was out of character for Samantha, who had always been open and trusting. One night, curiosity got the better of me, and I decided to check her phone while she was in the shower. To my dismay, I found that her messages were all deleted, and her call history was meticulously cleared. My heart sank, but I still couldn't bring myself to accuse her without proof. Samantha's interactions with me also changed in more intimate ways. Our sex life, once passionate and fulfilling, had dwindled to almost nothing. When I tried to initiate, she would turn me down with excuses of being too tired or not feeling well. It felt like there was an invisible wall between us, one that I couldn't understand or break through. Despite these growing suspicions, I kept silent, hoping that it was all in my head, that my insecurities were playing tricks on me. I didn't want to believe that the woman I had loved and trusted for 2 decades could be capable of betraying me. But as the signs continued to pile up, I knew I couldn't ignore them forever. Something was very wrong, and I needed to find out what. The turning point came one Saturday afternoon when Samantha announced she had to leave for an urgent meeting with a client. She was unusually anxious and seemed eager to get out of the house. As she rushed out the door, a wave of unease washed over me. I decided to follow her, hoping to put my mind at ease once and for all. I trailed her car at a safe distance, my heart pounding with a mix of fear and determination. She drove across town to a secluded cafe, a place we had never visited together. I parked a few spots away and watched as she entered the cafe, greeted warmly by a man I didn't recognize. They hugged briefly before sitting down at a corner table, their heads close together as they talked. My mind raced with possibilities, each one more painful than the last. Who was this man? What was their relationship? The answers to these questions would shatter my world, but I knew I couldn't turn back now. I needed to uncover the truth, no matter how devastating it might be. Sitting in my car, I watched Samantha and the man through the cafe's window, my heart sinking deeper with every passing second. They seemed relaxed and comfortable with each other, their body language betraying a familiarity that couldn't be explained away by mere friendship. I felt a lump forming in my throat, but I forced myself to stay calm and think clearly. I decided to wait for them to leave. After what felt like an eternity, they stood up, paid the bill, and walked out of the cafe together. They didn't head for the parking lot, though. Instead, they strolled down the street, laughing and talking like lovers on a date. I followed at a distance, my mind reeling with a mix of anger, sadness, and disbelief. As they turned a corner, I saw them enter a small boutique hotel. The sight hit me like a punch to the gut. Any remaining doubts I had were obliterated. I parked the car and sat there for a moment, feeling a wave of nausea wash over me. This was it, the incontrovertible proof that Samantha was cheating on me. Driven by a surge of adrenaline, I decided to confront her right then and there. I walked into the hotel lobby, trying to keep my composure. The receptionist barely glanced up as I passed by, too engrossed in her computer screen to notice my turmoil. I took the stairs two at a time, my heart pounding in my ears. Reaching the floor where I had seen them enter, I heard faint voices coming from one of the rooms. I approached the door, hesitated for a moment, then knocked sharply. The voices stopped abruptly, and after a few tense seconds, the door creaked open. Samantha stood there, her face a mask of shock and fear. "Daniel, what are you doing here?" she stammered, trying to block the view inside with her body. "I should be asking you that," I replied, my voice shaking with barely suppressed rage. "Who's in there with you?" Before she could respond, the man from the cafe appeared behind her, looking equally startled. "This isn't what it looks like," Samantha said, her voice rising in panic. "Really? Because it looks like you're cheating on me," I shot back. "How long has this been going on, Samantha?" She didn't answer, just looked away, her silence confirming everything. The man, clearly uncomfortable, muttered an apology and slipped out of the room, leaving us alone. The door clicked shut behind him, and an oppressive silence filled the space between us. "You owe me an explanation," I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. "How could you do this to me, to our family?" Samantha finally met my eyes, tears streaming down her face. "I'm so sorry, Daniel. I never meant for it to get this far." "How long?" I demanded, my patience wearing thin. 6 months, she whispered. "It started out as just talking, but then it became something more." Her confession hit me like a ton of bricks. 6 months of lies, deceit, and betrayal. I felt a wave of anger and sadness crash over me, but I knew I had to stay focused. "Why, Samantha? Why him?" She looked down, her hands trembling. "I don't know. I felt lonely, disconnected. You were always working, and I just needed someone to talk to." "That's your excuse? Loneliness?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "We could have talked. We could have worked through it, but you chose to betray me instead." "I know, and I'm sorry. I never wanted to hurt you," she sobbed. "Well, you did. You hurt me, you hurt our kids, and you destroyed our family," I said, my voice breaking. "I can't stay here. I need to think." I turned and walked away, leaving her standing there, crying. As I drove home, the reality of what had happened began to sink in. My marriage was over, and the life I had known was gone. The future was uncertain, and the road ahead would be filled with difficult decisions and painful conversations. But one thing was clear. I had to confront this betrayal head-on and figure out how to rebuild my life from the shattered pieces Samantha had left behind. I spent the next few days in a daze, struggling to process the enormity of what I had discovered. Every time I looked at Samantha, I saw her with that man, their betrayal playing over and over in my mind like a cruel, unending loop. She tried to reach out, to talk, but I couldn't bring myself to listen. The trust between us was shattered, replaced by a chasm of hurt and anger. One evening, after the kids had gone to bed, I finally decided it was time to have the conversation we had been avoiding. Samantha was sitting in the living room, staring blankly at the television. I walked in and turned it off, then sat down across from her. She looked at me, her eyes red from crying, but I felt no sympathy, only the burning need for answers. "We need to talk," I said, my voice cold and detached. "About what happens next." Samantha nodded, tears welling up in her eyes again. "I know, Daniel. I'm so sorry. I'll do anything to make this right." "Make this right?" I laughed bitterly. "You think you can just apologize and everything will go back to normal? Do you have any idea how much damage you've done?" "I know I've hurt you," she said, her voice trembling. "But I love you, Daniel. I never stopped loving you." "Love? You call this love?" I snapped. "You've been lying to me for months, sneaking around behind my back. That's not love, Samantha. That's betrayal." She broke down, sobbing uncontrollably. "I didn't mean for it to happen. I was weak, and I made a terrible mistake. Please, Daniel, give me a chance to fix this." I stared at her, feeling a mix of anger and pity. "You want a chance? Then start by telling me the truth. Why him? Why did you do it?" She took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. "His name is Mark. He's an old friend from college. We reconnected on Facebook, and it just happened. I felt neglected, like you didn't see me anymore. Mark listened. He made me feel important." "Neglected?" I shook my head in disbelief. "I've been working hard to provide for this family, to give us a good life, and you repay me by cheating? That's your excuse?" "It's not an excuse," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's just how I felt. I know it's wrong, and I'm sorry." "Sorry doesn't cut it, Samantha. Not this time," I replied, my anger boiling over. "You've destroyed everything we built together. How do you expect me to forgive you?" She reached out, trying to touch my hand, but I pulled away. "I don't know, I can't imagine my life without you, without our family." "You should have thought of that before," I said, standing up. "I need time to think. I can't be around you right now." As I turned to leave, she called after me, her voice desperate. "Daniel, please, don't go. We can work through this. We can see a counselor, anything. Just don't give up on us." I stopped, my back to her, and took a deep breath. "I don't know if I can do that, Samantha. You've broken something that might never be fixed." I walked out of the room, leaving her sobbing on the couch. I needed space, time to clear my head and figure out what to do next. As much as I wanted to believe in the possibility of reconciliation, the pain and betrayal were too fresh, too raw. I spent the night in the guest room, staring at the ceiling, wondering how we had reached this point and whether our marriage could ever recover. The next morning, Samantha tried to approach me again, but I was still too hurt, too angry to listen. I avoided her as much as possible, focusing on the kids and my work, anything to keep my mind off the turmoil at home. But I knew we couldn't go on like this forever. A decision had to be made, and soon. One evening, I came home to find Samantha sitting at the kitchen table with a stack of papers in front of her. "What's this?" I asked, my curiosity piqued despite my better judgment. "Divorce papers," she said quietly, her eyes downcast. "I talked to a lawyer. I thought maybe it's what you wanted." I felt a lump in my throat, a mix of relief and sadness. "And what do you want, Samantha?" "I want our family back," she said, tears streaming down her face. "But I don't know if that's possible anymore. So if this is what you need to move on, I won't fight it." I looked at the papers, my mind racing. The idea of ending our marriage felt like admitting defeat, like giving up on everything we had built. But the thought of staying, of trying to rebuild trust that had been so thoroughly shattered, seemed equally impossible. "I need more time," I said finally. I need to think about what's best for the kids. For all of us. She nodded, wiping her tears. Take all the time you need, Daniel. I just want you to know that I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make this right. To earn back your trust. I didn't respond, just turned and walked away, feeling the weight of the decision pressing down on me. The path ahead was uncertain, filled with pain and difficult choices. But one thing was clear. Our lives would never be the same, and the road to healing would be long and arduous. In the days that followed, the emotional turmoil continued to churn inside me, refusing to settle. The sense of betrayal was overwhelming, and every time I saw Samantha, it reignited my anger. I needed an outlet, a way to take back control and find some semblance of justice for the pain she had caused. I began to formulate a plan. Samantha's betrayal couldn't go unpunished. If she thought she could destroy our family and walk away with a mere apology, she was sorely mistaken. My first step was to gather more information about Mark, the man she had cheated with. I needed to understand the full extent of their relationship and how deeply it had affected my life. Using the skills I had acquired over my years as an engineer, I delved into Mark's online presence. I found his social media profiles, his professional history, and even some personal details that he had foolishly left unguarded. The more I learned, the more my anger festered. Mark was married, with a family of his own. His wife, unaware of his deceit, deserved to know the truth just as much as I had. I composed an anonymous letter to Mark's wife, detailing the affair and providing enough evidence to leave no room for doubt. It was a cold, calculated move, but I felt a grim satisfaction in knowing that Mark's betrayal would soon implode his life as well. I mailed the letter, imagining the chaos it would bring to their seemingly perfect world. But my revenge didn't stop there. Samantha needed to understand the gravity of her actions. I began to systematically dismantle the trust she had in her social and professional life. I contacted her closest friends, sharing the details of her affair and expressing my pain and disillusionment. I was careful to present it as a desperate cry for help, ensuring that the blame fell squarely on her shoulders. The impact was immediate. Samantha's friends, shocked and dismayed by her actions, began to distance themselves from her. The once vibrant social circle she enjoyed started to crumble, leaving her isolated and vulnerable. She confronted me one evening, her face a mask of anguish. "Why are you doing this, Daniel?" she demanded, her voice shaking. "I thought you wanted time to think, not to destroy my life." "This is your doing, Samantha," I replied coldly. "You made your choices and now you're facing the consequences. Did you think you could betray me and not suffer any repercussions?" "I'm sorry, Daniel," she pleaded, tears streaming down her face. "I've lost everything, my friends, my dignity. Isn't that enough? Please, stop this." "Enough?" I scoffed. "You haven't begun to understand what you've done, but maybe this will help." My next move was to target her professional reputation. Using the information I had gathered, I crafted a series of anonymous emails to her colleagues and clients, hinting at her unprofessional behavior and questionable ethics. I made sure to include subtle references to her affair, casting doubt on her reliability and integrity. It didn't take long for the whispers to start, for the trust she had built in her career to erode. Samantha was devastated. She came home one evening, her face pale and drawn. "I lost my biggest client today," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "They said they couldn't work with someone who had such a scandalous personal life. Daniel, please. You're destroying me." I looked at her, feeling a strange mix of satisfaction and sorrow. "You destroyed us, Samantha. This is just the fallout." Despite the escalating tension, I maintained a facade of normalcy for the sake of Emily and Josh. They were already affected by the strained atmosphere at home, and I didn't want to add to their distress. But inside, I was seething, determined to see my revenge through to the end. The final blow came when I decided to publicly expose her infidelity. I compiled the evidence I'd gathered, text messages, photos, and screenshots of conversations, and posted them anonymously on social media. The post went viral within our community, and the backlash was immediate and severe. Samantha became a pariah, shunned and ridiculed by everyone who had once respected her. One night, after the children were asleep, Samantha confronted me again, her spirit completely broken. "You've ruined my life, Daniel," she said, her voice hollow. "I have nothing left. No friends, no career, no dignity. What more do you want from me? I looked at her, my anger finally spent. I want you to understand the pain you've caused. I want you to feel the betrayal and humiliation I felt. And now that you do, maybe we can start to move on. I'm so sorry, she whispered, collapsing into a chair. I never wanted this. I never wanted to hurt you. Sorry won't fix what's broken, Samantha. But maybe it's a start, I said, my voice softer now. We need to decide what's best for our family, for Emily and Josh. They don't deserve any of this. As we sat in silence, the enormity of our situation settled over us. The road to healing would be long and painful, but perhaps, with the truth finally laid bare, we could begin to find a way forward. Whether that meant rebuilding our marriage or going our separate ways, only time would tell. For now, we had to face the consequences of our actions and find a way to protect our children from the fallout of our shattered lives. The days following Samantha's complete social and professional destruction were filled with an uneasy silence. Emily and Josh could sense the tension, their once vibrant home now steeped in a heavy, oppressive atmosphere. Samantha and I tried to shield them from the worst of it, but there was no hiding the truth forever. Our marriage was fractured beyond repair, and the time had come to face the inevitable. One evening, after putting the kids to bed, I found Samantha in the kitchen, staring blankly at a cup of tea. She looked up as I entered, her eyes hollow and filled with a sadness that mirrored my own. It was time for our final conversation, the one that would determine the future for both of us and our children. We need to talk, I said, sitting down across from her. We can't keep going like this. It's not fair to the kids, and it's not fair to ourselves. She nodded, her voice barely a whisper. I know. I've been thinking about it too. We can't go back to the way things were, can we? No, I replied, the weight of the words settling heavily between us. Too much has happened. Too much damage has been done. Tears welled up in her eyes. I never meant to hurt you, Daniel. I know that doesn't change anything, but it's the truth. I was selfish and stupid, and I've paid the price. We both have. I believe you, I said softly. But believing you doesn't erase the betrayal. It doesn't undo the pain, and it certainly doesn't fix our marriage. She wiped her tears away, taking a deep breath. What do we do now? How do we move forward? We need to put the kids first, I said firmly. They're already dealing with enough. We have to make sure this doesn't destroy their lives too. I agree, she said, her voice steadying. Emily and Josh deserve better. They need stability, and they need to know they're loved by both of us, no matter what happens between you and me. I nodded, grateful for her understanding. I've been thinking about it, and I think the best thing for all of us is to separate, at least for now. It'll give us both the space we need to heal and figure out what comes next. Samantha looked down at her hands, her fingers trembling. I don't want to lose you, Daniel, but I understand. If this is what you need, then I'll respect that. I want what's best for you and the kids. I appreciate that, I said, feeling a pang of sadness. I've already spoken to a lawyer, and we can work out the details of the separation. We'll make sure the kids have as much stability as possible. We'll explain it to them together, so they know we're both here for them. She nodded, her eyes filled with regret. I'll move out. It's the least I can do. I'll find a place nearby so I can still be close to the kids. Thank you, I said, genuinely appreciating her willingness to make this as smooth as possible. We'll get through this, Samantha. It won't be easy, but we'll find a way. For the kids. She reached across the table, her hand hovering over mine before pulling back. I'm so sorry for everything, Daniel. I hope one day you can forgive me. I looked at her, seeing the woman I had loved for so many years, now a stranger burdened by the consequences of her choices. Maybe one day, I said, my voice heavy with emotion. But for now, we need to focus on moving forward. We sat in silence for a while, the enormity of our decision settling in. There was a sense of finality, but also a glimmer of hope. Hope that we could find a way to co-parent our children with love and respect. Hope that we could rebuild our lives, even if it meant doing so separately. The next morning, we called Emily and Josh into the living room. They looked at us with worried eyes, sensing that something was wrong. Samantha and I sat them down and explained the situation as gently as we could. We told them that we loved them more than anything and that we were both committed to being there for them, no matter what. Their tears and questions broke our hearts, but we held them close, reassuring them that we would get through this together. Samantha moved out a week later, finding a small apartment nearby. The kids spent their time between our two homes, adjusting to the new reality of their lives. It was a difficult transition, but we made it work, putting their needs above our own pain. In the quiet moments after she left, I found myself reflecting on our last conversation. It had been painful, but it was also a necessary step toward healing. We had faced the truth, acknowledged the damage, and made the difficult decision to move forward separately. It wasn't the ending I had envisioned for our story, but it was a new beginning, one that held the promise of a different kind of happiness for all of us. The weeks that followed our separation were filled with a tense kind of peace. Samantha and I maintained a fragile truce, focusing on co-parenting Emily and Josh while navigating the rocky terrain of our new lives. The children adjusted as best as they could, their resilience a source of strength for me during the most challenging moments. Despite the awkwardness, Samantha and I managed to keep things civil, if only for their sake. Eventually, the day of the trial arrived. It was a cold, gray morning, the kind that seemed to mirror the solemnity of the occasion. I dressed in my best suit, my heart heavy with the gravity of what lay ahead. The courthouse loomed before me, a stark reminder of how far we had fallen from the life we once shared. I arrived early, taking a moment to gather my thoughts before stepping inside. The sterile halls echoed with the quiet shuffle of other people facing their own legal battles, their expressions a mix of anxiety and determination. I found my lawyer, Mr. Davis, waiting for me near the entrance to the courtroom. "Morning, Daniel," he said, offering a firm handshake. "How are you holding up?" "As well as can be expected," I replied, trying to muster a smile. "Let's get this over with." We entered the courtroom, a small utilitarian space with rows of wooden benches and a judge's bench at the front. Samantha was already there, sitting with her lawyer, a look of nervous determination on her face. She glanced up as I entered, our eyes meeting briefly before she looked away. The judge, a stern-looking woman with graying hair and sharp eyes, called the court to order. "This hearing is to address the dissolution of the marriage between Daniel and Samantha Thompson. Let's proceed." Mr. Davis began by outlining our case, presenting the evidence of Samantha's infidelity and the impact it had on our family. He spoke with a calm, measured tone, emphasizing our desire for a fair and amicable resolution, especially concerning the custody of Emily and Josh. Samantha's lawyer responded, highlighting her willingness to co-parent and her commitment to the children's well-being. The judge listened intently, her expression unreadable as she weighed the arguments. After what felt like an eternity, she spoke. "Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, it is clear that both of you care deeply for your children and want what is best for them. While the circumstances of your separation are regrettable, it is commendable that you have managed to maintain a cooperative approach to co-parenting. Therefore, I am granting joint custody, with both parents sharing equal time and responsibilities." She paused, her gaze shifting between us. "However, regarding the division of assets and alimony, it is evident that the affair has significantly impacted the trust and financial stability of this marriage. Mrs. Thompson, you will receive a reduced alimony, reflective of your contributions to the household, but taking into account the breach of trust." Samantha nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. "Thank you, Your Honor," she said softly. I felt a mix of relief and sadness wash over me. The judge's decision was fair, but it underscored the finality of our marriage's end. We were no longer husband and wife, but two individuals navigating the aftermath of betrayal, bound together only by our children. As the proceedings concluded, the judge offered a few final words. "I encourage both of you to continue working together for the sake of your children. Divorce is never easy, but it can be an opportunity for growth and healing. I wish you both the best in your future endeavors." With that, the hearing was over. Samantha and I left the courtroom, a heavy silence hanging between us. Outside, I took a deep breath, the cold air filling my lungs and clearing my mind. "Daniel," Samantha said quietly, her voice trembling, "I know this doesn't change anything, but I want you to know that I'm truly sorry for everything. I hope one day you can find it in your heart to forgive me." I looked at her, seeing the remorse etched in her features. "It's going to take time, Samantha. A lot of time. But for now, let's focus on the kids. They need us to be strong for them." She nodded, a tear slipping down her cheek. "I understand. Thank you, Daniel, for everything." We parted ways, each heading to our respective cars. As I drove home, I reflected on the journey that had brought us to this point. The pain, the betrayal, the anger, all of it had led to this moment of closure. The trial was over, but the process of healing had only just begun. Life after the trial was a delicate balance of rebuilding and redefining. I threw myself into my work and focused on being the best father I could be. Emily and Josh were my anchors, their laughter and resilience reminding me of what truly mattered. Samantha and I navigated the complexities of co-parenting, gradually finding a rhythm that worked for all of us. Despite the challenges, there were moments of hope and renewal. I reconnected with old friends, found solace in new hobbies, and slowly began to envision a future beyond the shadows of betrayal. It was a long road, but with each step, I felt a little lighter, a little stronger. The trial had marked the end of one chapter, but it also signaled the beginning of a new one. A chapter filled with uncertainty, yes, but also with the promise of growth, healing, and the possibility of happiness once more. In the months that followed the trial, I found myself gradually adapting to my new reality. The scars of betrayal were still there, but time, as always, began to heal the wounds. Emily and Josh remained my top priority, and every decision I made was with their well-being in mind. Co-parenting with Samantha, though challenging, became more manageable as we settled into our new roles. I moved into a cozy townhouse a few blocks away from our old home, close enough for the kids to easily transition between the two places. It was a fresh start, and I took the opportunity to make the space my own. The walls were adorned with photos of happy memories, reminders of the love and joy that still existed in our lives. I reconnected with old friends and made new ones, slowly rebuilding the social life I had neglected during the turmoil of my marriage. One of my oldest friends, Tom, had been a pillar of support throughout the ordeal. He encouraged me to join a local hiking group, something I had always enjoyed but had lost touch with over the years. The hiking group became a sanctuary, a place where I could escape the stresses of daily life and reconnect with nature. The physical exertion and the camaraderie of the group provided a much-needed outlet for my pent-up emotions. On one of our hikes, I met a woman named Laura. She was vibrant and kind, with a smile that could light up a room. We struck up a conversation, and over time our friendship blossomed into something more. Laura was a breath of fresh air. She understood my past and respected the boundaries I needed to heal. Our relationship was built on mutual respect and understanding, and for the first time in a long time, I felt genuinely happy. Emily and Josh took to her quickly, and their approval meant the world to me. Meanwhile, Samantha and I continued to navigate the complexities of our new relationship. We maintained open communication for the sake of the kids, and slowly the hostility between us began to fade. There were still moments of tension, but we both worked hard to put the past behind us and focus on creating a stable, loving environment for Emily and Josh. One evening, while having dinner with Laura, she brought up the subject of forgiveness. "Daniel," she said gently, "have you thought about forgiving Samantha? Not for her sake, but for yours?" I looked at her, pondering her words. "I don't know if I can ever truly forgive her, Laura. The pain she caused runs deep." "I understand," she said, taking my hand. "But holding on to that pain can keep you from fully moving on. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting or excusing what happened. It means letting go of the hold it has on you." Her words resonated with me. I realized that in order to fully embrace my new life, I needed to find a way to let go of the bitterness and resentment. It wouldn't be easy, but it was a step I needed to take for my own peace of mind. Over the next few weeks, I focused on healing from within. I attended therapy sessions, worked through my feelings, and gradually found a sense of closure. One day, I invited Samantha to meet for coffee. It was time for a final conversation, one that would allow both of us to move forward. We met at a quiet cafe, the same one where I had first discovered her betrayal. The irony wasn't lost on me, but this time, I was determined to leave with a sense of resolution. "Samantha," I began, "I've been doing a lot of thinking. What you did hurt me deeply, and it will take time for those wounds to fully heal. But I realize that holding on to anger and resentment isn't helping anyone, especially not Emily and Josh." She nodded, tears welling up in her eyes. "I understand, Daniel. I've regretted my actions every single day. I never wanted to hurt you." "I know," I said, my voice steady. "And I want you to know that I forgive you. Not because what you did was okay, but because I need to let go of the pain. For my sake, and for the kids' sake." Tears streamed down her face as she reached across the table, taking my hand. "Thank you, Daniel. That means more to me than you know. I hope we can continue to work together for our children, and maybe even find a way to be friends again." I squeezed her hand gently. "I hope so too, Samantha. For now, let's focus on being the best parents we can be." As I left the cafe, I felt a sense of lightness, as if a great weight had been lifted from my shoulders. Forgiving Samantha didn't erase the past, but it allowed me to look forward to the future with hope and optimism. Laura and I continued to grow closer, and with her support, I found a renewed sense of purpose and joy in life. We traveled, explored new hobbies, and created beautiful memories together. Emily and Josh thrived in the stable, loving environment we worked hard to provide, and seeing them happy was the greatest reward of all. Life had taken an unexpected turn, but through the pain and hardship, I discovered a strength I didn't know I possessed. I learned that even in the face of betrayal, it was possible to rebuild, to find happiness, and to create a new beginning. As I looked at my children, their laughter filling the room, and felt Laura's hand in mine, I knew that despite the challenges, I had found a way to move forward. The future was bright, and for the first time in a long time, I felt truly at peace.